Và kính mời quý vị Phật tử đã vào chánh điện thì chúng ta tìm cho mình một chỗ ngồi ổn định và chúng ta sẽ cùng nhau bắt đầu ngồi tĩnh tâm. Dear respected Thai, dear community, now we are approaching the time where we will sit together in order to meditate. We'll have around 10 to 15 minutes of silent sitting meditation before we officially begin the Sunday service. So we would like to invite you to find a comfortable place, a place to sit, find a comfortable posture to enjoy the meditation together as a community. Kính thưa đại chúng, ở trong giờ phút này, nếu chúng ta đã vào chánh điện và đang tìm cho mình một chỗ ngồi, thì chúng ta xin đại chúng cùng dồn lên phía trước và ngồi lấp những khoảng trống, bắt đầu từ hàng đầu tiên để các vị đến sau có thể nối tiếp theo sau và ngồi xuống. And if you were arriving, if you have just come to the hall, then please move to the front spaces so that our friends who will come in after will have a place to sit. Xin đại chúng hoan hỷ lưu ý và cùng thực tập. Nếu chúng ta có mang theo điện thoại thì xin đại chúng chuyển điện thoại từ tiếng reo sang chế độ rung để tránh trường hợp điện thoại của chúng ta bị reo trong khi buổi lễ đang diễn ra. Dear friends, we would like to also ask for your support. If you have brought your cell phone, then please, at this moment, take a minute to switch your cell phone into vibration mode so that the cell phone does not ring during the Sunday service. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your practice. Chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu ngồi tĩnh tâm sau khi chúng ta nghe một tiếng chuông. We will begin to have some time to sit in peace and quiet after we listen to the three sounds of the bell. Xin đại chúng cùng thực tập. Chúng ta giữ yên lặng và chúng ta bắt đầu ngồi tĩnh tâm. từ đầu cho đến cuối, không gián đoạn. We are invited to sit in an upright posture, maintaining an upright posture, however, relaxing our shoulders, our arms, our legs, and come back to the present moment. Follow our breath. As we breathe in, we are aware that this is the in-breath, and as we breathe out, we are aware that this is the out-breath. In-breath, aware. Out-breath, aware. Following our breathing from the very beginning to the very end, all the way through without interruption. If any wandering thoughts come to cross our mind, just recognize them and let them go. Chúng ta theo dõi hơi thở, và nếu có một ý niệm suy nghĩ nào khởi lên trong tâm, chúng ta chỉ cần nhận biết và buông bỏ. Sau đó chúng ta trở về với hơi thở, theo dõi hơi thở. Chỉ cần trong vòng vài phút thôi, với hơi thở sẵn có của mình, với năng lượng của chánh niệm, chúng ta đã có thể tìm lại được bình an. Chúng ta đã có thể tìm lại được sự yên lặng trong tâm hồn của mình. Nó không cần phải đi đâu xa, không cần phải mong mỏi tìm cầu. With just a few breaths, with awareness following our conscious breathing, we can already touch the element of peace to regain our balance. Just a few breaths can already bring back to us a state of peace, of calmness, and of joy. thì chúng ta dồn lên phía trên và ngồi ắp những tấm tàu cụ vào và những cái gối ngồi đã được sắp sẵn. So, dear Sangha, dear community, please help us to move up to the front rows and to fill up all of the spaces that are in the front. Thank you for your support.
Kính mời đại chúng mở trang số 0. Open the chanting book on page 0. Trầm hương đôn sống ngàn mười phương, nguyện nhiệm màu đã lan truyền nơi cùng nơi. Nhờ chân lý chúng sanh đều thoát luân hồi. Đồng quy kinh quỳ dưới đại sen, dâng hoa thơm tinh khiết màu thắm tươi cành. Đại quang minh sáng huy hoàng trang nghiêm, ở mười phương điều ngự hào quang an lành. Nhìn đạo uyên chuyên soi khắp cùng quần sanh, phần đạo đồng cùng nhau tu tin tân màu viên thành. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Hương đốt khói trầm sóng ngát, kết thành một đóa tượng vân. Đệ tử đem lòng thành kính cúng dường chư Bụt mười phương, với lực chuyên trì miên mật. Công vô thiền định tinh cần tuệ giác hiện, dần quả báo dân thành một nét tâm hương. Chúng con kính dâng hương cúng dường lên Phật và chư vị Bồ Tát. Hôm nay Ngài tu học đệ tử chúng con cung tôi Phật tiền, thành tâm phúng tụng kinh văn lễ Phật hồng danh sám hối nguyện, đem công đức này trang nghiêm Phật tịnh độ. Thượng báo tứ trọng ân hạ tế tam đồ, khổ thứ nguyện hồi hướng kỳ nguyện kỳ siêu chư hương linh. Trần vấn lợi pháp danh Minh Lộc Trương Thị Nguyên William Sa Beston Antiuti Lâm Huy Ly Vĩ Đông Lê Hồng Phung Minh Trường Nguyễn Thị Xuân Lan Trần Văn An Đi Võ Tấn Quang Phạm Văn Thông Lê Lê Joyce Maris Batiska Pitin Lê Anh Tuấn Pháp danh Thiện Tu Nguyễn Thị Ngân Pháp danh Diệu Nga Nguyễn Thị Nhung Đỗ Thị Liền Dương Kiến Đà Pháp danh Phố Nguyễn Nhật Gia Nguyễn Thị Lại Pháp danh Diệu Chúc Nguyễn Văn Hạnh Tề An Đức Phạm Văn Ba Trần Thị Mạnh Lê Văn Sang Tuệ Đạo Nguyễn Thị Cẩm Trương Thị Nga Phạm Hòa Nhật Anh Từ Tâm Nguyện Cao Ngọc Ngà Nguyễn Văn Đắc Trần Văn Cú Liệu Hoa Trần Thị Kim Diệu Dung Dư Ngọc Anh Cho Chin Chôn Ngọc Minh Dương Thị Bốn Như Đức Nguyễn Đức Thọ Trần Thị Việt Cường nguyện cặp chư hương linh quy kỳ từ các tộc các chi các phái đặng đặng chư hương linh đồng nương nhờ Phật lực Lai đa Phật tiền tinh pha văn kinh tội diệt phước sanh tổng thoát mê độ siêu sanh tịnh độ. Tương nguyện hồi hướng kỳ an chư tinh chủ, nguyện thị điệp pháp danh thanh hồi đồng thị. Thủy diệu mỹ di ngọc huyền diệu hảo vũ tru nhường nguyên thái đặng ngọc thông quỳnh phi liếp pháp danh nhật tiên. Hô thị mùi hô cẩm võ đặng văn hề thiện từ phan thị ngọc mai diệu trinh phạm thị liên nga nhật minh. Cùng hiện tiền đệ tử chúng con thân tâm thanh tịnh tật bệnh tiêu trừ tai qua nạn khỏi sở nguyện tỳ tâm kiến tường như ý. Đôn nén tâm ương chư Phật đại ngũ phần dân tròn đắng Như Lai cầu xin nhân loại lên bờ giác hạnh phúc bình an đến muôn loài. Nam mô Hương cúng dường Bồ Tát Ma Tát.
The one who bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore, the communication between them is inexpressibly perfect. Our practice center is the net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas everywhere. And with my person in front of each Buddha, I go with my whole life for refuge. Teaching and living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion. Shakyamuni Buddha, the fully enlightened one, to whom we bow in gratitude. Showing the way fearlessly and compassionately, the stream of all our ancestral teachers, to whom we bow in gratitude. Offering light in the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude.
Kính mời đại chúng đồng an tọa. Open the chanting book on page 4. The Dharma is dear and lovely. We now have the chance to sit, study, and to practice it. We vow to realize true meaning. Nam mô Tướng Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni. Nam mô Tướng Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni.
Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni. Pháp Bổn Cao siêu màu nhiệm.
Cơ duyên mây đường thọ trì, xin nguyện đi vào biển tuệ, tinh thông giáo nghĩa nguyên vi kinh tinh yêu ban nhà ba la mật đa bồ tát quán tự tại khi quán chiếu tâm sâu.
Nhà Ba La Mật Tư diệu pháp trí độ bồng soi thấy năm huân điều không có tự thân thực chứng điều ấy xong ngài vượt thoát tất cả mọi khổ đau khánh nạn.
Nghe đây ra lời tự thân chẳng khác gì không, không chẳng khác gì sáng, sáng chính thượng là không, không chính thượng là sáng, còn lại bốn quận kia cũng đều như vậy cả.
Lời tự nghe đây thế mọi pháp đều không, không sanh cũng không diệt, không nhớ cũng không sạch, không thêm cũng không bớt, cho nên trong tâm không, không có sát thọ tưởng hành.
Hành thương không có nhãn nhị tỳ địa thân y sao căn, không có sắc thanh hương vị dụng pháp sáu trần, không có 18 giới từ nhàn đến y thức, không hề có vô minh, không có hình vô minh.
Cho đến không lão tử cũng không hết, lão tử không khổ tạo diệt đạo, không trí cũng không đắc, vì không có sở đắc. Khi một vị Bồ Tát nương diệu pháp
Lại Đức Bồ Tát Quan Thế Âm, chúng con xin học theo hạnh Ngài, biết lắng tai nghe cho cuộc đời bớt khổ. Ngài là trái tim biết nghe và biết hiểu. Chúng con xin tập ngồi nghe với tất cả sự chú tâm và thành khẩn của chúng con. Chúng con xin tập ngồi nghe với tâm không thành kiến. Chúng con xin tập ngồi nghe mà không phán xét, không phản ứng. Chúng con nguyện tập ngồi nghe để hiểu. Chúng con xin nguyện ngồi nghe chăm chú để có thể hiểu được những điều đang nghe và cả những điều không nói. Chúng con biết chỉ cần lắng nghe thôi, chúng con đã làm vơi bớt rất nhiều khổ đau của kẻ khác rồi.
Invoking the Bodhisattva's names. We invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering in the world. You know how to listen in order to understand. We invoke your name in order to practice listening with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will sit and listen without any prejudice. We shall sit and listen without judging or reacting. We will sit and listen in order to understand. We will sit and listen so attentively that we will be able to hear what the other person is saying and also what has been left unsaid. We know that just by listening deeply, we already alleviate a great deal of pain and suffering in the other person.
Lại Đức Bồ Tát Văn Thù Sư Lợi, chúng con xin học theo hạnh Ngài, biết dừng lại và nhìn sâu vào lòng sự vật và vào lòng người. Chúng con xin tập nhìn với tất cả sự chú tâm và thành khẩn của chúng con. Chúng con xin tập nhìn với con mắt không thành kiến. Chúng con xin tập nhìn mà không phán xét, không phản ứng. Chúng con nguyện tập nhìn sâu để thấy và để hiểu những gốc rễ của mọi khổ đau, để thấy được tự tánh vô thường và vô ngã của vạn vật. Chúng con xin học theo hạnh Ngài, dùng rươm trí tuệ để đoạn trừ phiền não, giải thoát khổ đau cho chúng con và cho mọi giới.
We invoke your name, Manjushri. We aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the heart of things and into the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will look with unprejudiced eyes. We will look without judging or reacting. We will look deeply so that we will be able to see and understand the roots of ill-being, the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. We will practice your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of ill-being, thus freeing ourselves and other species.
Lại Đức Bồ Tát Phổ Hiền, chúng con xin học theo hạnh nguyện của Ngài, biết đem con mắt và trái tim đi vào cuộc sống. Chúng con xin nguyện buổi sáng dâng niềm vui cho người, buổi chiều giúp người bớt khổ. Chúng con biết hạnh phúc của người chính là hạnh phúc của mình, và nguyện thực hiện niềm vui trên con đường phụng sự. Chúng con biết mỗi lời nói, mỗi cái nhìn, mỗi cử chỉ và mỗi nụ cười đều có thể đem lại hạnh phúc cho người. Chúng con biết rằng nếu chúng con siêng năng tu tập thì tự thân chúng con có thể là một nguồn an lạc bất tuyệt cho những người thân yêu của chúng con và cho cả muôn loài.
We invoke your name, Samantabhadra. We aspire to practice your aspiration to act with the eyes and heart of compassion. We vow to bring joy to one person in the morning and to ease the pain of one person in the afternoon. We know that the happiness of others is our own happiness, and we vow to practice joy on the path of service. We know that every word, every look, every action, and every smile can bring happiness to others. We know that if we practice wholeheartedly, we ourselves become an inexhaustible source of peace and joy for our loved ones and for all species.
Lại Đức Bồ Tát Địa Tạng, chúng con xin học theo hạnh Ngài, tìm cách có mặt ở bất cứ nơi nào mà bóng tối, khổ đau, tuyệt vọng và áp bức còn đang chống ngự, để có thể mang đến những nơi ấy ánh sáng, niềm tin, hy vọng và giải thoát. Chúng con nguyện không bao giờ quên lãng và bỏ rơi những người còn bị kẹt trong những tình huống tuyệt vọng. Nguyện cố gắng thiết lập liên lạc với những ai đang không còn lối thoát, những ai bị bưng bít không có phương tiện để lên tiếng kêu gọi công bình, nhân phẩm và quyền tự do được làm người. Chúng con biết địa ngục có mặt khắp nơi trên thế giới, và chúng con nguyện sẽ không bao giờ tiếp sức xây dựng thêm những địa ngục trần gian như thế. Trái lại, chúng con xin nguyện nỗ lực giải trừ những địa ngục đang có mặt. Chúng con nguyện tu học để đạt được đức vững chãi và kiên trì của đất, và có thể trở thành trung kiên và không kỳ thị như đất, và cũng được như đất có thể làm nơi nương tựa cho tất cả những ai cần đến chúng con.
We invoke your name, Siddhigarba. We aspire to learn your way as to be present where there is darkness, suffering, oppression, and despair, so that we may bring light, hope, relief, and liberation to those places. We are determined not to forget about or abandon those who are in desperate situations. We shall do our best to establish contact with them when they cannot find the way out of their suffering, and when their cries for help, injustice, equality, and human rights are not heard. We know that hell can be found on many places on earth, and we do not want to contribute to making more hells on earth. Rather, we want to help unmake the hells which already exist. We shall practice to realize the qualities of perseverance and stability which belong to the earth. So like the earth, we can always be supportive and mindful, supportive and faithful to those who need us.
Kính mời đại chúng mở trang số 13. Open the Chanting book on page 30. Hướng về kính lạy đứng Như Lai, hải đăng chiếu soi biển trần phồn.
Xin Đức từ bi xót thương giúp thọ chúng con hôm nay khẩn thiết nguyện quay về.
Để đưa chúng con bốn mang nặng chứa dịp báo đến, nhìn ra ba cõi bốn bên,
Thấy muôn loài còn chìm trong khổ đàn, bỗng giật mình kinh hãi, biết rằng dù đã quay đầu nhìn lại,
vẫn thấy rằng bên giác còn xa, mãi thấy trong cõi ta bà đâu cũng có cánh tay đứng từ bi cứu độ.
ở đây chúng con một lòng nguyện quay về nước
cuối sinh bồn pháp và tăng xót thương.
Chúng con biết rõ tự thân nghiệp chướng còn nặng, phước đức còn mong manh, tri giác vẫn thường hay sai lầm, tệ căn vẫn còn chưa vững chãi.
Tâm nhiễm mô còn về phá khởi, vẫn tư tu chưa thực sự vững bền. Giờ phút này ngưỡng vọng đại sen,
Năm vấp cùng gieo xuống, mong lượng từ mở rộng. Chúng con xin trải hết lòng ra,
đệ tử chúng con từ muôn kiếp xa xưa, vì không nhận diện được bản tâm thanh tịnh,
nên đã chạy theo trần cánh, ba nghiệp nhiễm mô, đắm trong tham ái mê mờ, ghen hờn giận.
nay nhờ chuông đại hồng khua ban tịnh mộng, quyết một lòng làm mới thân tâm, bao nhiêu tội ác lỡ lầm.
Nguyện xin hoàn toàn cốt sạch, chúng con giờ phút này đây lập nguyện sâu dày, xa lìa tập khí cũ,
Xuống đời về nương tựa thân thân, xin buồn đưa cánh tay ân cần, từ bi nâng đỡ, nguyện trong khi thiện tầm, nguyện những lúc phát đàm.
lúc đứng khi đi, nấu cơm rửa bát, nằm ngồi làm việc, giặt áo kinh hành, trì niệm hồng danh.
Hương lại buồn mỗi bước chân sẽ đem về an lạc, mỗi nụ cười sẽ tỏ chiếu lành thơi.
Xong chánh niệm trong mỗi phút giây, là chỉ dạy cho người thấy con đường thoát khổ, nguyện thấy được tịnh độ.
Dưới mọi bước chân mình, nguyện tìm sung bạn một, trong mọi khi hành xử, bước trên thật địa, thở giữa chân không.
Thắp lên tri sáng diệu tâm, bàn vô minh quét sạch, thân tâm tịnh lạc, tư thái thông dong.
Đến Trúc Lâm dung tầm không liệm tiếng, thân không đạo nhưng ý không hồn mê, chánh niệm rõ ràng định làm sao căn.
Buông bỏ bao thân như vào thiền định, nếu cần thọ sinh kiếp khác, sẽ làm lại để tử đức Như Lai, tiếp theo sự nghiệp cứu đời.
Đưa một sáu thần thông quá nguyện ngàn vàng ức thân, có mặt một nơi trong ba cõi.
Ra vào tự tại hóa độ mọi loài, không bỏ một ai, tất cả đều đưa lên bờ không nói chuyện.
Thế giới vô tận nghiệp và phiền não điều cũng vô tận, nguyện con cũng thế sẽ là vô tận.
Con nay xin lại bột phát nguyện tu trì công đức, chia sẻ với muôn loài hữu tình này, để báo được trọn vẹn bốn ơn bà.
Giao hoa khắp nơi trong ba cõi, xin nguyện cùng tất cả mọi loài chúng sanh hoàn thành tuệ giác lớn. Open the Chanting book on page 22. Mời đại chúng mở kinh trang số 22. Nguyện ngày an lành, đêm an lành, ngày đêm sáu thời đều an lành trong mỗi giây mỗi phút.
Cầu tam bảo luôn che chở, Nam mô Đức Bồ Tát tiêu tai giác kiết tường, Nam mô Đức Bồ Tát tiêu tai giác kiết tường.
Nam mô Đức Bồ Tát tiêu tai giác kiết tường, con về nương tựa buồn, người đưa đường chỉ lối cho con trong cuộc đời.
Con về nương tựa pháp, con đường của tình thương và sự hiểu biết. Con về nương tựa tăng, đoàn thể của những người nguyện sống cuộc đời tinh thức.
Kệ tụng kinh thâm diệu, tạo công đức vô biên, đệ tử xin hồi hướng cho chúng sanh mọi miền.
Con xin nguyện học ơn nghĩa, xin nguyện đền phiền não, xin nguyện đoạn quả Phật, xin chứng
Kính mời đại chúng ta xả chân trước khi chúng ta đứng dậy lễ Phật.
In gratitude to our parents who have given us life, to our country who has offered us security and protection, we touch the earth deeply, to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha in the 10 directions.
Đệ tử chúng con mang ơn cha mẹ sanh thành quân dân bảo hộ, kính cúi đầu kính lễ tam bảo thường trụ trong 10 phương.
In gratitude to our teachers who have shown us the way, to all our friends on this path who have offered us support, we touch the earth deeply to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha in the 10 directions.
Đệ tử chúng con mang ơn sư trưởng giáo huấn cùng các bậc thiện tri thức Đạt tán thành cho. Cúi đầu kính lễ Tam Bảo thường trú trong mười phương.
In gratitude to all beings, beings in the animal, plant, and mineral worlds, we touch the earth deeply to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, ever present in the 10 directions.
Đệ tử chúng con mang ơn mọi loài chúng sanh, cây cỏ cầm thú và đấng đa. Cúi đầu kính lễ Tam Bảo thường trú trong mười phương. Kính mời đại chúng đồng an tọa. Please sit down again and practice listen to the Dharma talk. Và kính thưa đại chúng, trước khi buổi pháp thoại bằng tiếng Anh, kính mời quý vị, những vị nào có sử dụng điện thoại thì xin chuyển sang chế độ im lặng hoặc tắt nguồn để cho buổi lễ thanh tịnh và trang nghiêm. Một lần nữa kính nhắc đại chúng, những vị nào có sử dụng điện thoại thì chúng ta chuyển sang chế độ im lặng hoặc tắt nguồn. Xin cảm niệm đại chúng đã dẫn chờ.
Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Con kính bạch trên thầy, kính bạch trên quý thầy, quý sư cô và toàn thể đại chúng, quý bác, quý cô, chú, anh chị. Trước khi chúng ta bắt đầu, con xin phép được trước khi con xin phép được bắt đầu chia sẻ Phật pháp bằng tiếng Anh cho các bạn trẻ, thì con kính mời đại chúng ta chắp tay và đồng niệm Phật 3 lần.
Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư
Good morning, dear community. Today is March 10th, 2024, and how are you doing today? Kính thưa đại chúng, hôm nay là ngày 10 tháng 3 năm 2024. Hôm nay đại chúng có khỏe không? A Di Đà Phật. Dear friends, so last week we had a chance to continue to study the Mahamangala Sutta, and this time we will also continue to study. However, the good news is, actually the bad news is, because we've already passed the 6th verse, so we're moving on to the 7th verse now. But as you might have experienced, if you were here many weeks before as well, that just learning from these very, very small verses is very helpful for our practice indeed. And so even one verse with 4 lines can be branched out into many, many different sharings. And just one line in 4 verses, just one line in one stanza or one verse can be practiced for our whole entire lives. And there's no guarantee that we will be able to practice this fully and completely. And so it is sad that we are moving on, but we have to move on because it has taken us many, many weeks already and we still haven't finished the sutra, but there's no need to rush. So just for some context for our friends who have come here for the first time, or some of our friends who haven't heard the previous sharings before, and we are studying a text that records the Buddha's teaching, a discourse given by the Buddha to a deva. In one instance, a deva, and in another version of the same text to a holy man. And so the Buddha gives this teaching on 38 conditions of happiness that we all have, or 38 things that are considered great blessings. Translated into English very beautifully by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh as the greatest happiness. So we're on verse 7, and this is the verse that we are studying right now. To avoid unwholesome actions, not caught by alcoholism or drugs, and to be diligent in doing good things, this is the greatest happiness. Tránh không làm điều ác, không say sưa nghiện ngập, tinh cần làm việc lành là phước đức lớn nhất. This discourse is called the discourse on the greatest happiness, discourse on happiness. According to the commentary given by our spiritual ancestors, given commentary to the Buddha's teachings, the word Mangala, or the word Mangala in the phrase Mahamangala, describing the greatest happiness, can also mean anything that is conducive to happiness, conducive to prosperity. So, as we listen to the first verse, to this verse, to avoid unwholesome actions, to not be caught by alcoholism or drugs, and to be diligent in doing good things, this is the greatest happiness. Very easy and simple to understand, right, brothers and sisters? However, it is a whole lifetime worth of practice. As soon as I hear this verse, automatically a story comes into my mind. And often when I have the chance to introduce the teachings of the Buddha to anyone, I always refer to the story because I really like the story a lot. And it is the story of Master Bird's Nest. If you've been to our previous sharings before, then maybe you've heard me mention it once in a while. The story of old Master Bird's Nest. Master Bird's Nest, we call in Vietnamese O Sao Thiền Sư, or Thiền Sư Điểu Hòa Đạo Lâm, or O Hòa Đạo Lâm. In Chinese, he's actually a Chinese Zen master, and his name is Nhao Ke Dao Ling. And he was a Zen master that lived in a Chan master who lived in the Tang dynasty. He became a monk at a young age, and when he got older, there was one instant where he spent his life in the mountains. In China, there are many, many, many mountains, but he lived around the area of Hangzhou. And the special thing about Master Bird's Nest was he spent a lot of his time, he enjoyed spending his time meditating in a tree. And because he was meditating in a tree, and the leaves and the branches of the tree above him kind of made a small umbrella, and at the bottom he kind of made a platform on the branches and leaves that were sticking out, the bigger branches. That's why people called him Master Bird's Nest. And also for another reason he is called Master Bird's Nest, is because the birds, especially the magpies, would enjoy making their nests around him. So they weren't scared of him at all, and they enjoyed living harmoniously with Master Bird's Nest, sharing their home. And he was quite a well-known monk. And if you ever have the chance to study Chinese poetry, then you will know of a poet named Bạch Cư Yi. He's a very famous Chinese poet. He was an official. In Chinese, his name is Bai Ju Yi. And Bai Ju Yi was Zen Master, Chan Master Bird's Nest's disciple. It's said to be that he was his disciple. So one day, Bai Ju Yi came to visit his master, and he said, looking up at the tree, probably just joking around, poking at his master a little bit, and he said, "Master, isn't it dangerous up there where you are?" And the master replied to him, "Isn't your position more dangerous?" Next, after saying that, the Zen master asked Bai Ju Yi, the Bai Ju Yi asked the poet, he asked the Zen master, what is the essence of the teaching? And here when we refer to the teaching, we refer to the teaching of the Buddha, or not even the teaching of the Buddha in this case. We refer to the Dharma, and when we refer to the Dharma, we refer to this as the truth, the correct truth that can be perceived in life. As I mentioned before, the Buddha didn't create the Dharma, but the Buddha found the Dharma as a truth in life. For example, he saw that life was impermanent. He saw that life was not only impermanent, but he saw that we were all connected to each other. He saw that we don't have a separate self. We cannot exist without each other. So these are truths that the Buddha realizes in life. And these truths being shared to us can help us to live more happily. So he asked the master, what is the essence of the teaching? And the master said, not to commit evils, but to practice all good, and to keep the heart pure. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. So this is very easy for us to remember. Firstly, not to commit evils. Secondly, to practice all good. And thirdly, is to keep our heart, our mind pure. And this is the teaching of all of the Buddhas. Then Bai Ju Yi looked up at the master and he said, yeah, sure. Even a 3-year-old child knows this concept of doing good and not doing bad. And then the Zen master said, a 3-year-old child can say it, he may be able to know it, but there's no guarantee that an 80-year-old man for his entire life has been able to practice and fulfill it. So in our practice, we know that we have the chance to encounter the Dharma, the path of understanding, the path of compassion, the path of wisdom. So we know, but knowing is only one of the 3 stages of learning. Listening, and then we reflect, and in the end we practice. Vang, Tu, and Tu. Vang means to listen. We receive the information from the texts, from the Buddha, from our spiritual friends, from our teachers. Then we reflect, and after reflecting on that teaching, we apply it to our lives to see if it actually works. And the Buddha encouraged his disciples not to believe in any teaching that is handed down by tradition, or anything that they cannot come and experience for themselves to see the benefit. So if they happen to listen to a teaching, even if it was the Buddha's teaching himself, they should put that teaching into practice to see if it works. And if it works, then they should live up to it for the rest of their lives. And this is a very wonderful thing that the Buddha offers us as a teacher. So we know the practice, we know the Dharma, we have a general concept of the Dharma, but do we practice the Dharma? That is the question. And do we have enough mindfulness in order to head towards that direction? And how can we practice the Dharma in a concise way? I'm sure many of us are hearing the sound of the crying baby at this moment. The most concise way to practice the Dharma is to keep our mindfulness trainings. I had a small happy moment this morning when I was talking to Bante, our Sri Lankan Buddhist monk. He came from Toronto, I believe, but before he was born and raised in Sri Lanka. And I was asking him this morning, Bante, do you have any story that I could share with the Sangha about this verse, this stanza that I'm going to share this morning? And after listening to me share briefly about what I wanted to share, he gave me a story. After he gave me that story, he said, brother, I have a really good idea. Maybe even with these very small verses, we can branch up a talk that could last for maybe even 3 hours, and even more than 3 hours, based on what I have pre-planned. And he had this bright look in his eyes. He told me, we can base it on the 5 precepts. And I was happy because I was thinking the exact same thing in the morning. So as Buddhist practitioners, we are encouraged to practice 5 mindfulness trainings. And we call them trainings because they are a kind of learning that we are going towards. We might not be perfect at them. We might not be keeping them 100% perfectly, but we should be heading towards that direction as Buddhist practitioners. And you will start to see, once I enumerate these trainings for everyone, is that these trainings are not necessarily Buddhist at all. It's just all about being a good human being. The first is you are aware of the suffering that is present in life that is caused by killing or by the taking or the destruction of life. You vow to protect life instead of cause harm to life. That is the first one. The second one is not to steal. And you know that there's a lot of injustice in society. You know that a lot of things mean a lot to you, just as if they mean a lot to other people. And also we're aware that we actually don't need much to be happy. Think of the Buddha. The Buddha, he left everything behind. But he had everything. He had a palace. He had many palaces. He had a loving family. He had everything one could ever want. All the riches and power and authority of a prince, of a king to be. But the Buddha left everything behind because he didn't see any permanent happiness in it. And then he went to become a hermit, a monk, an ascetic, who on his body wore only fragments of clothing. It is said that when the Buddha first renounced, after he left the palace in the middle of the night, and when he tried to find more suitable attire for him, because he was still dressed in reasonably luxurious clothes, he was looking around to find some other thing to change into. And he happened to see a man who was wearing a robe, probably the robe that is the color of maybe like a yellowish, orangey color, like a kind of murky color. And this is the color that ascetics usually wear, or ascetics usually wear. And he came to this man and he asked if he could exchange his own attire for the simple garments that he was wearing. And the man asked the Buddha who the Buddha was and about his whereabouts, because he was wearing pretty luxurious clothing and he looked very noble. And the Buddha said, oh yes, I'm the prince of the Sakya clan, of the kingdom of Kapilavastu, and now I've gone into the wilderness to seek the truth. And I would like to exchange my clothing for yours. And he said, are you sure? You're gonna exchange me this for this really old and torn cloth? And the Buddha was happy to do it. And the reason why the man was wearing that cloth was he was actually a hunter. And because he thought that animals are not afraid, usually around the ascetics and the hermits in the mountains, because the hermits don't do anything to hurt the animals. So the hunter tried to disguise himself as a hermit. In this way, he got the chances to get more, to be able to shoot down more animals. And luckily the Buddha was able to exchange those robes. And those were the very first robes that the Buddha wore into the wilderness to seek for the truth. Sorry, I've gone totally off the wheel, but back onto track. When the master replied to the poet, and he spoke about those verses that I mentioned, to cease to do all evil, to try to cultivate all the good things, and to keep our mind pure. That is the teaching of all the Buddhas. We were talking about the mindfulness trainings, not to take life, to understand that we have enough. Yeah. So the Buddha had enough. The Buddha could see that he had enough, even though he had a palace, he had everything that we could have wanted. But the Buddha was able to let go of that, to exchange everything just for a coarse old robe. And the Buddha was able to find the truth and the answer to true happiness, the end to suffering, through wearing those robes. So we might enjoy wearing maybe some clothing that we like at the store. We might enjoy buying a certain brand of clothing, but we know that from the story of the Buddha, we know that those things will not bring us everlasting happiness. We could wear anything, but if our hearts, if our minds are not pure, if we don't cultivate our minds, then it is very difficult to touch happiness in our lives. In the Dhammapada, which is something that we've been studying with our teacher, this verse is found in the Dhammapada, and it's more or less the same, and it is known as the Gatha of the 7 ancient Buddhas. It is said that all the Buddhas taught essentially the same kind of spirit of practice. Not to do evil, to cultivate good, to cultivate merit, to purify one's mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas, and this is found in the chapter on the Buddha in the Dhammapada, which is a text of short stanzas and verses collected together that were uttered by the Buddha himself. And through listening to these very simple lines, we can see that clearly Buddhism is indeed a way of life. We know about the Eightfold Path, chánh kiến, chánh tư duy, right view, right thinking, chánh ngữ, right speech, chánh nghiệp, right livelihood, chánh nghiệp, right action, chánh mạng, right livelihood, chánh tinh tấn, right diligence, chánh niệm, right mindfulness, and chánh định, right concentration. That we see that Buddhism is based on the Noble Eightfold Path, based on the Four Noble Truths, which is finding the understanding that there is suffering. But when we understand that there is suffering, we try to find the causes of that suffering. And once we understand the causes of that suffering, then we understand the path. Once we know how to unknot that knot, then we can slowly, once we understand that it is possible to unknot a really big knot that has been bundled up for a long time, then we can start going at it slowly. And the way that we do that is the Noble Eightfold Path. So Buddhism is, some people say it is a religion, and they can see it as a religion, but Buddhism is also a way of life. For me personally, I feel that Buddhism is more of a way of life. Let us go more deeply into the first line of the verse, which is to avoid doing unwholesome actions, to cease and abstain from evil or wrongdoing. The key word here is, I think, avoiding, because we as human beings, are going to make mistakes. Accidentally, sometimes unintentionally, we make unwholesome or unskillful mistakes. However, if we have the practice of mindfulness, these mistakes can very easily be avoided. It is in our habit, for example, to react right away when we feel angry, or it is in our habit to believe something right away, even if we don't understand completely the situation, or we see a person just on the surface and we judge them like that just because of the way that we see them. And these are just normal human flaws. If we were good practitioners, if we were like the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then we wouldn't have to practice anymore, right? But we are human beings, that's why we make these mistakes. And these mistakes are usually always produced through 3 doors. That is our body, our speech, and our mind. And these are called the 3 karmas. And the word karma translates into action. Actions of body, speech, and mind. It troubled me for a little bit. I was up last night trying to plan for this talk, and I was pretty tired, and I was sitting there, and sometimes my head went blank, especially when I got to the part where I related the term karma to the karmas of body, speech, and mind. Karma meaning action. I thought to myself, how does the mind take action? Because it's easy to understand that you act something out with your body. It's maybe a little bit more blurry when you say you act something out with your speech, but how do you act something out with your mind? And I found this one very beautiful teaching by Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, which I would like to read to you quickly about the actions of body, speech, and mind. And this is why in Buddhism we call them karmas, actions. The mind. When you produce a thought of non-discrimination, understanding, and compassion, you begin to heal yourself and the world. Every thought you produce bears your signature, and you are responsible for your action. You think that after you produce a thought, the thought disappears. But no. Thought is an energy, is an action. According to the law of conservation, no energy is lost. That thought continues in you, and that is why in your practice it is important to produce good thoughts, thoughts of non-discrimination, compassion, and understanding. And if you can do so, you can assure a beautiful continuation. So I read this, and it was able to lift off the heavy load on my heart right away. And it's really beautiful how when we listen to this verse, the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh mentions that your thoughts can be seen as a kind of energy, a kind of action. And when I was in school, I remember learning the law on the conservation of mass, I think, the law of conservation, that energy cannot be produced nor destroyed, can only be transferred. And later on, as I studied the teachings of the Buddha, I was able to link these two together. And reading this made me really happy. I was able to lift off a lot of the heaviness that was on my heart. And the next is speech, the other door of karma. The second kind of action is speech. When we are able to say something or write a letter with non-discrimination, compassion, understanding, and forgiveness, you heal yourself and you heal the other person. You give them hope. We practice to produce the kind of speech that can heal and that can reconcile. Personally, for me, as a practice, I always try to find the best way to say something to another person that I feel personally to me would not bring me pain. Even if it was to try to constructively to try to tell someone that they did something to hurt me, or tell someone that what they're doing is not skillful, is not right, or is not good. Or if I feel hurt myself and I want to try to convey this to the other person, I try my best to give myself some time to reflect on the words that I will say before I offer those words to the other person. Before we turn on our phones, we press call. There is a gatha that the monks practice, and it is a very beautiful gatha. Tiến xa ngoài vạn dặm, xây dựng niềm tin yêu, mỗi lời là châu ngọc, mỗi lời là gấm thêu. It means the voice can be heard from thousands and thousands of miles away. Tiến xa ngoài vạn dặm, xây dựng niềm tin yêu. And each word, if produced with mindfulness, with awareness, can build trust, can build love. Mỗi lời là châu ngọc, or từng lời là châu ngọc. Each word is like a precious jewel. Each word is like a beautiful piece of embroidered fabric. And so it's a really good practice, because let's say we habituate ourselves every time before we answer the phone to recite this stanza in our mind. Then let's say if we're very, very angry and we're about to pick up the phone to tell someone something that is quite hurtful, then if we have this habit to recite the gatha, then that gatha will save our lives, or save the relationship, and it will save our love, our trust from being broken down. The same with our mindfulness practice. When we come to the temple, when we come to the monastery, and we sit in silence for 5 or 10 minutes, or we chant, we recite the discourses, we read the texts, little by little, although we don't notice a very, very huge difference maybe, but it is like walking in the mist. And when you walk in the mist for a really long time, your clothes become wet without you even knowing it. So the more that we practice, the more that it will take effect on our lives in ways that which ways we cannot imagine. The third one is the body, not doing unwholesome things. The third kind of action is bodily action. Eating, drinking, having a job. Having a job belongs to the realm of bodily action. Every act of yours should be right action. Right action is characterized by non-discrimination, compassion, and understanding. So, in what the Buddha taught, not to do, in the verse that we're studying right now, to avoid unwholesome actions, to not be caught by alcoholism or drugs, and to be diligent in doing good things, this is the greatest happiness. If we take the 5 precepts, the 5 mindfulness trainings, which is respecting life, we protect life, we don't kill, we don't take life, we don't steal because we know that we have enough to be happy, more than enough to be happy. And the third one is, we know that relationships are broken because of sexual misconduct, or because of cheating, because of lack of faith in relationships. And we also know that there's a lot of suffering in the world. Children there are children that are suffering from, for example, sexual abuse, and we are aware of these sufferings, and that is why we try our best to live in such a way where we don't engage in sexual misconduct. And that is the third training. The fourth training is practicing loving speech. So it is just what I explained, what I read. Not to say unwholesome things. Speaking with understanding, speaking with compassion and forgivingness. Each word that we speak, each word that we give to each other can be a gift, can be a precious jewel, can be a piece of beautiful embroidered fabric. The fifth mindfulness training is not to intoxicate our bodies. So not to drink alcohol, not to do drugs, not to put anything into our body and also mind that is harmful to our body and mind. When we came into this world, our parents gave us a body that was healthy and complete, and that's why we're still here. They gave us a mind that was also very, very, very fresh, very healthy at the same time. And through the conditions that we encounter in life, there are changes in our body and there are changes in our mind. But we have the power to be able to shift those changes, to steer ourselves towards a good direction. So those are the 5 mindfulness trainings, and if we just practice the 5 mindfulness trainings, we are already doing this 7th verse, right? To avoid unwholesome actions. That means we practice the 5 mindfulness training, not to kill, not to steal, not to engage in sexual misconduct, not to lie, not to destroy our bodies, and that is to avoid unwholesome actions. Then we complete the second line, which is not to be caught by alcoholism or drugs. And then the reason why in Buddhism, or in the Buddhist teaching, we encourage practitioners not to drink alcohol is because when you drink alcohol, you lose a great deal of self-control. You become heedless and become very, very... your mind is not easy to control. Your body is not easy to control too. I remember when I've never drank to know what losing control feels like before. But I remember when we were doing this drug and alcohol unit in school, the police came and they gave us these glasses to put on. And when you put on these glasses, it kind of shifts your vision in such a way where you can't walk straight. And they tell you, this is what it looks like when you're drunk. And I remember that was the first time I was like, wow, people actually try to walk like this? And it was really cool because those glasses were just normal glasses, but when you put them on, they distorted your vision in such a way where you can't walk upright and straight. So the very fact that we can't walk upright, we are not in control of our body, also means that it is very difficult for us to be in control of our mind during that moment. There's a story of a man who had a drink, and he lived next door to him was a lady, and the lady had been taking care of some chickens, so then she could sell the chickens, and so then she could take the eggs to sell the eggs. And he was a man who tried to keep the precepts, but on one day he just couldn't resist it, and he drank a lot of alcohol. And after he drank the alcohol, he went outside and he went over to the lady's house next to him. When his wife was away, he was probably something was making him unhappy, so he drank a lot. And then he went next door and he saw the lady. First, he waited till the lady was gone and he took the chicken because he was very hungry after he drank the alcohol. He took the chicken and he killed the chicken. So that is the first violation of the first precept, kill the chicken. He ate the chicken, and afterwards when he ate the chicken, the lady from the other house came to his house and said, "Hey, have you seen my chicken?" And he said, "I don't know, I didn't see any chicken." And so then he violated another precept, which was not to lie. And when he saw the lady there, he couldn't control himself. So he engaged in sexual misconduct. And when his wife came home, he also lied to his wife. So in just drinking this alcoholic beverages, just over drinking, caused him to mess himself up pretty bad and break all 5 mindfulness trainings at once. And this is why in the teachings of the Buddha, we encourage lay practitioners not to drink. Although sometimes people might say it is okay to have a beer or to for example, to have a glass of wine or something during a party because everyone else is doing it. And to a certain extent, arguably, some say it is acceptable, but if we are serious practitioners, then we know that we have enough power, enough willpower in ourselves and enough capacity to abstain from it all at once, just as the monks. In regards to our karma, there's a really interesting passage that I read last night about karma. Karma that is intentional and karma that is unintentional. So there's a text called the Milinda Panha, and this is a text that records the dialogue between a venerable monk named Nagasena and a king named Menander, or King Milinda, a Bactrio-Greek king, I believe, who was very, very interested in Buddhism, and I believe he became a Buddhist himself. But he asked very, very many questions in this text, and they're all very, very interesting questions. So the king asked Venerable Nagasena, "For whom is the greater demerit, one who knowingly does evil or one who does evil unknowingly?" And the Venerable replied, "Indeed, Your Majesty, for him who does evil not knowing is the greater demerit." So that's strange, because usually when you purposely do something, intentfully do something wrong, then that would imply that you had a lot of ill will and you wanted to do whatever it was that was negative. But in this case, the Venerable Nagasena says it the opposite way around. And the king asks, "In that case, Venerable Nagasena, would we doubly punish, for example, a minister who is under the king's chief minister, for example, who follows the king's order and he doesn't know that there are intents behind that order, for example?" And the Venerable Nagasena replied, "What do you think, Your Majesty? Who would get burned more? One person knowing that there is this hot iron ball that is aflame, that is ablaze and glowing. This person who knows that it is aflame and very, very hot, they try to pick it up, or the person who not knowingly tries to pick up that ball of flame." So hopefully I'm not confusing anyone here. There's a person who is knowingly picking up that ball of flame, and there's a person who doesn't know that ball of flame is very, very, very hot. And the king replied, "Indeed, Venerable Sir, the person who doesn't know when he picks it up, he will get burned more." Just as if we intentionally know that we're handling something very hot, for example, a candle, or we're near the stove, we try our best to keep ourselves away from the source of fire. But for a person who is not mindful, maybe he will come up to the stove and place his hand on it because he needs to be stable. Or when he's not mindful, he accidentally burns himself because the stove was turned on and then turned off and left for a while. So in this case, the person who doesn't know got burned more than the person who does know. So with intentional karma and unintentional karma, we can see it in the same light. It's a really interesting point of view. When someone does something bad, or when someone does something, let's say in Buddhism we don't really say bad, but we refer to it more as unwholesome or unskillful. That person obviously needs our help. The people that are grabbing onto this hot coal, this hot flame, and those people could be ourselves. We obviously need a lot of help, and the people around us need a lot of help too. And we live together in a community, we live together as a family, and some of us are more mature than others. For example, moms and dads are more mature than brothers and sisters, and elder brothers and sisters are more mature than younger brothers and sisters. So in our family, let's say if we have a younger brother or sister, or let's say if our younger brother or sister is only a baby, they barely know how to walk, barely know how to feed themselves, they poo and they pee in their diaper, and they do all this stuff. But when parents take care of their children, they know that their the baby cannot do anything more than that. That's just the way the baby is for now. And you can't expect the baby or push the baby in any way to grow any faster. And so when we understand that, we know that there's no reason to be angry at the baby. There's no sensible reason for us to be angry at the baby. Just like this little guy, he doesn't know anything. He's just walking around. There's no reason for me to be angry at him because he doesn't know any better. And so if we know the teachings of the Buddha, if we come regularly to the monastery, we listen to the sermons, and we have some connection to the teachings of the Buddha and apply them to our lives, then we can say that we are a bit more mature. We understand life as it is a little bit better. We know how to live more compassionately. We know how to live more wisely. So in this light, we can be seen as an elder sibling. Just imagine yourself as an elder sibling to people or to your younger siblings who have not had the capacity to be as mature as you. And when someone is unskillful, we have more space to forgive them because we know that that person at this moment, during that time, only can be skillful up to that limit. Not to mention that I know that in my life, I know a lot of people who have trouble with mental illnesses. And myself, I grew up, I have ADHD, so that is a difficulty that I have, and I forget a lot. Sometimes I get very distracted, or it's hard for me to focus sometimes. Sometimes when other people see it, they think that I'm not focusing or I'm not trying my best, and it makes me suffer a lot because truly I'm really, really trying to do my best. But in those times, my capacity is only up to that moment. Even when I try really, really hard to remember something, like when I go attend our teacher Tai on a tour, I follow Tai, and in my mind I always think, what should I do next for Tai? What should I do next? Should I prepare his towel? Does he need his book? I'm always thinking of what I should do next for Tai. But in the end, I end up forgetting the most important things. And this is something that I don't want. This is something that I really don't mean. So sometimes there are people who have certain limits. And Tai always says, in the Buddhist teaching, one thing that is really helpful to practice is to accept more than we expect. Because if we expect more, we just suffer more. Not everything around us can meet our expectations. But if we learn to accept bit by bit, the more that we learn to accept, then the more that we will feel easy in ourselves first. Together, there's always a way to help other people transform. Together, there's always a way to help other people become more skillful. And as a teenager, although we are a bit more mature than those, let's say, who are babies or toddlers, but teenagers have their ups and downs too, right? Teenagers have mood swings. Sometimes they're really, really happy, and then something happens and they're really, really sad for a long time. And as a teenager, we're very happy, very excited to be a grown-up when we get to do something that is a grown-up thing. But once we realize how hard it is to be a grown-up, we might become discouraged. Just as if we're expecting a younger brother or sister in our family, and we're really happy, we're really eager. Oh, I'm gonna have a younger brother, oh, I'm gonna have a younger sister. But once we actually get our younger brother and sister, we become a little bit ngang. We don't want them anymore. We think it's too much work. The same thing in our relationships. We marry someone when we first get into a relationship, and we befriend that person, and then we want that person. We're excited to live together with that person. But once we live together with that person, we start to realize that it's not as easy as we think it was. The same with the practice as well. So, as people who know how to practice a little bit, we still have our ups and downs. We're like the teenagers, and sometimes we go through breakups in our relationships. We ourselves act like a baby. Sometimes when a teenager, for example, goes through a breakup, they might not eat for a while, or they might prefer a huge tub of ice cream over real healthy food, and prefer watching movies or going to parties to find ways to cover up that sadness. And as practitioners, we are more or less the same. Although we know a little bit of the Dharma, we understand a little bit of the teachings, it doesn't guarantee that we're perfect yet. Once we are grown into an adult, and we become mature enough to understand that, relationships, breakups are normal, they happen in life. That is the true nature of life. Things like that happen and we suffer much less. And so as Buddhist practitioners, as I reflected and I saw that we as practitioners in life go through basically the same levels. Yeah, it's okay. And the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, in the teachings, we see them as our teachers, as our guides, or like a mother or a father, are the best kind, who are very wise, very compassionate, ready to be there for us when we have difficulties, ready to be there to listen to our sufferings. Although we are elder brothers and sisters, because we know a little bit of the practice, mình biết tu một chút xíu, cho nên mình được làm anh chị lớn trong gia đình. But one day we will have to grow into moms and dads. One day we will have to grow into adults. And so this is the teaching in Buddhism where we say, one day we will all become Buddhas. Although there is unskillfulness, although we are all prone to making mistakes, but we have to embrace each other. We have to try our best to fulfill our responsibility at whatever stage we're at. If we're a baby, it's okay. If we're a teenager, it's okay. And if we're already adults, that's okay. But everyone is growing at the same time, whether we see it or not. So we continue this cultivation, we continue this practice, and together we will grow. Very, very simple. The practice of all Buddhas, the teachings of all Buddhas, is what dear Sangha, to not do anything bad, to do all wholesome things, and to keep our minds pure. That is the teachings of all the Buddhas. Might not be perfect, we might not be perfect in practicing these teachings, but together, one day we will get there. So thank you so much for your listening. Thank you so much for your presence and your patience as well. I hope you have a wonderful day. I apologize. Today's talk was not so fluent because last night, honestly, I didn't sleep at all. So that's why sometimes my brain is spacing out a little bit, or I'm stuttering a lot compared to usual, but hopefully I didn't make everyone tired having to sit through everything. Thank you. Kính cảm ơn quý bác, quý cô, quý chú đã ngồi kiên nhẫn để con được chia sẻ với các bạn trẻ. Và bây giờ chúng ta sẽ tiếp tục chương trình tiếp theo, đó là tiếng cúng chư vị. Next we will have our ancestors